How do you find the right people for your network marketing business? Yeah. How do you find the right people for your network marketing business? So stay tuned, stay business savvy, don't go nowhere. Be right back in a minute.
Let's say a quick prayer to my people in Puerto Rico. Salute. Let's say a quick prayer to my people in Mexico. Salute. I don't do this for me. I do it for me and my vato. 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 Ricky called saying he had a situation. I said, homie, I thought you was on vacation. He said I was, but got caught in the situation. I'm with Border Patrol when they talk about deportation. To flip a script into a motion picture. The new Napoleon, looking like a man that snuck a pole into the ground. Surprise, I struck petroleum. I'm the sickest when it comes to these rap scriptures. Quick to flip a script into a motion picture. The new Napoleon, looking like a man that snuck a pole into the ground. Surprise, I struck petroleum. I'm the sickest when it comes to these rap scriptures. Quick to flip a script into a dictator, get paper. Ghetto ambassador, mellow philosopher. You may have to adjust your camera aperture, cause I'm the man with the plan that's been planning to take over the... I really hate it when prospects ask me things like, what are the odds? What are the odds, Chris, that I can make it here? What are the odds of making it to the top in your company? How does it work? What are the percentages of people that make it? I hate those kind of questions because they're totally ill-founded. They come in from absolutely the wrong footing. They're not even valid questions. Because what you and I do is not an investment scheme. It's not an annuity. It's not gambling. It's 100% predictable for the person that builds it. What your companies do is provide a pay plan and a product, and then you build up the volume. That's it. If you don't build up the volume, no pay. 100% predictable. If you build up the volume, lots of pay. There's no odds. All the odds of you making it are on you. The only gamble here is company allowing you to put their logo on your shirt. To walk into someone's house and represent them, there's the gamble. Isn't that flipping it around a little bit? So you are about the business of building an asset. Well, what kind of asset? Obviously, it's not property. It's not paper, as in ownership in companies or stocks and bonds and mutual funds. It's not paper. It's not property. What is it? It's personnel. You're building an asset, a collection of personnel. You're collecting relationships. You're building a community. We learned this, Orrin Woodward and I and a couple other of our associates years ago, November 1st, by the way. Is that today? Oh, wow. 14 years ago, right now. Orrin Woodward and I and a couple others were at a luncheon in Detroit, Michigan. And the guest speaker was none other than Michael Dell, who at the time was the wealthiest American citizen under the age of 40 that anybody knew about. And he came to speak, and I can't remember the title of the talk, but we thought it might work for us, and we could learn some stuff. And so we went there, and we were sitting out there in those seats, at little round tables, and eating the rubber chicken they serve you, and swirling our water in the goblets, and he was kind of boring, and he kind of just stood at the podium, and he didn't have any good jokes, and he talked about computers, which bore me to tears, and which much of that could have been expected, I guess, right? But then he got into something very interesting, and it made it worthwhile, and we're still talking about it 14 years later. Because he talked about the fact that the industrial age is over, the information age is here, and those who play according to the industrial age rules will be slaughtered by those who adhere to the new information age rules. This is old news now, 14 years since. And the way he portrayed it was that there were three categories you had to be world class in. And we've taken since then to calling them the 3 C's. Michael Dell's 3 C's: content, commerce, and community. Content is the product. It has to be world class. Your companies are in charge of doing that and putting out the best that they can, and there's people that spend their lives investing themselves in product development. I know we do a lot of that too. Commerce is where money changes hands, and the incentives have to be correct, and it has to be fair, and it has to be properly stimulated and aligned to performance and properly meritocracy, and there can't be a good old boy network, and it has to reward performance, and our profession is known for that. But the third one was the most important: community. Content, commerce, community. Community was by far, according to Dell, the most important. And he said this is really where the rubber meets the road, because anybody really can come up with some products, and anybody really can put together some incentives that follow performance, but really it comes down to building community. And that was the only part we had back then. We knew we had that part. Now let me see if I can explain it a little bit. Community goes beyond the concept of having a customer base. It goes beyond the idea of having a clientele. It goes to having a crowd of people who are, well, they're downright evangelical, to use a Christian term. They're evangelical. They can't help but spread the news about what they've got their hands on. And when you invest yourself in building an asset comprised of relationships with valuable human beings who are evangelical for what you do and what you represent, you can be on your speedboat in the middle of a lake someday on a Tuesday morning without any care in the world, owing no debt to anybody on the entire planet, because that's what we do. Now, let me give you an example. There's some great examples of this, and it's funny that we learned this from Michael Dell. How many of you have ever seen a Dell computer sticker on the back of a car? Anybody? Anyone? Bueller? How many of you have ever seen that white apple with a bite taken out of it? Exactly. Interestingly enough, Dell taught it, Steve Jobs perfected it. Have you ever, we can do another way. We can take a survey of the crowd. How many of you own Dell computers? A few hands will go up. How many people own Apple computers? 2 hands will go up. People do backflips. They cheer. They'll show me their tattoo. I've done that here a couple years ago, I think. It was fun. Somehow Apple created this community, this group of people that not only were they utilizing the products and buying the products, but they couldn't not tell you about how good they were. And quite frankly, if you didn't become an Apple customer too, you're stupid. That's how far connoisseurs go, isn't it? If you don't buy into, and one of the most famous examples is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now they're terrible this year, but the Pittsburgh Steelers have this enormous following, this cult-like community that just, they're everywhere. And I compare them to, say, another team, Kansas City Chiefs. Now, see, they're probably bandwagoners back there, because the Chiefs are having their first good year since I was like 2. And I've never gone anywhere in the United States and had anybody go, woo, when you say Kansas City Chiefs. I could mention the 31 other teams, including the Detroit Lions. And there are poor, sadly deceived individuals that would cheer. But there's a few teams out there like the Chiefs. They have their home market, and they never do anything wrong. They never do anything right. You just kind of never hear about them. They're just a team your team plays, and they collect a win, or something. And I'm kidding. I'm a little bit of tongue in cheek here. Don't have everybody from Kansas and Missouri come mug me up here afterwards. But if I said Pittsburgh Steelers, normally people storm the stage. They whip out a yellow towel. They show me their underwear. It's got Steelers logos on it. Somehow they've created this brand. They've created this culture, and that's what Dell was talking about. Now, how do you do that? By the way, how do you go beyond satisfying customers or having a clientele? How do you ratchet that upwards to the point of really having them be a real true community where they're totally passionate about you and what you do and your product and your company and the opportunity? How do you get to that? How do you go past what everybody else does and just satisfies customer or tries to where you actually amaze them? What you might call customer jubilation. Not just customer satisfaction, customer jubilation. How do you do that? How do you build? Well, obviously, a couple of ways. The product has to be really good. You pay them really well through the compensation plan, obviously, and some of that's outside of your control, some of you. But there's ways way beyond that. It's what you do and how you do it that determine whether or not you're building up the right kind of asset here. And it's done through relationships. I mean, you got to be sincere, and you have to care, and you have to learn the people skills. It really is important that you have character, but I'm not really going to touch on all of those this morning. I want to help you understand something else. I heard a quote one time by John Wooden, one of the most successful coaches ever, UCLA basketball coach, whole bunch of accolades. Some say probably the best coach ever, for sure collegiate. And he said, if you want to have a winning team, he said there's only two things. Only two things. He said, one, you have to have the right players. And two, you have to get the most out of them. That's profound. Here's a guy that went eight years in a row, won championships. He's still written about, all these years later. He hasn't even coached in 25 years. And he boils it down to those two simple things. You have to get the right players, and you have to be able to get the most out of them. When you consider what it is you're about here, when you think through what you do, and you're building up that asset of those valuable partnerships, those wonderful people, it comes down to those two things. You're trying to select and find and discover the right people. Notice I didn't say, or he didn't say, the best people. Notice he said the right people. It reminds me of the 1980 United States Olympic hockey team where the coach wasn't trying to select an all-star team, and his assistant coach said, hey, you're leaving out some of the best players. And he said, I'm not after the best players, I'm after the right ones. The right ones. So here, we are looking for the right players. That's step one. And what we teach is they need to be hungry, honorable, and honorable. Those three things. They have to be hungry. I don't care how sharp they are. I don't care how many people they know. I don't care how many companies they've built. I don't care all the things people, oh, Chris, I got this one guy. How do I approach this guy? Because he's special. I want to know, is he hungry? Is he hungry? Does he have any fight left in him? What does he dream about? What motivates him? What are his passions? What drives him? What does he wake up in the morning thinking about? What will he be totally regretful that he didn't do if he doesn't accomplish it in his life? I had a guy the other day, one of my up-and-coming leaders, and he texted me a really good question. He said, hey, Brady, where do you see yourself in 20 years? And I couldn't answer it. I don't have an answer for that. I know I teach goal setting. I know that's the kind of thing you and I, but I don't have some vision of where I'm going to be in 20 years. I can't come up with it. I go back 20 years. 20 years ago, I could not have known where I'd be. It wouldn't even been the same zip code. So I waste my time figuring out where I'm going to be in 20 years. It might be good to dream on. It might be good to vision toward that. I understand all that. But I answered him back, and I flipped it around. I said, here's a much better way to get where you want to be in 20 years. Because you really know what you're going to want in 20 years? You have no idea. But here's what you will know. I said, 20 years from now, what will you wish you'd been doing today? You want to be somewhere where you'd like to be in 20 years? You don't have to define it today. Just do today what you think you would wish you'd done then. You think you'd really wish you'd eaten that cheeseburger? Think you really wish you'd stayed at home, sat on the couch? No. You'll be glad 20 years from now that you did something wonderful today, that you did something courageous today, that you pushed out of your comfort zone today, that you tried super hard today, that you came to a conference like this, that you actually studied, listened, and took notes, that you went home and applied it, that you talked to the next prospect, that you drove depth further in your organization, that you hit that next level, that you set some goals, that you spent quality time with your kids, that you built a strong marriage, that you worshiped your Lord, that you did all those things. 20 years from now, that's what you'll be wishing that you did today. It's not that big of a puzzle to figure out. So when you're looking for the right people, that's how they think. They're doing the things today that can set them up for a better tomorrow. Or they're really, really searching for something. because they know what they're doing right now isn't something they'll be proud of 20 years hence. That's who you're looking for. Hungry.